0230, local time, 25 October 1944. The Formosa Strait, black between China and Formosa. Commander Richard H. O'Kane stood on the bridge of USS Tang, the top American submarine in the Pacific War, and watched a luminous torpedo wake turn left. Back at him, the fish he had just fired at a Japanese transport convoy was not heading for the enemy. It was hunting the boat that fired it. Stay with this one. The deadliest American submarine command of the Second World War is about to die by her own torpedo. The weapon that lied. The enemy in this story is not Japan. The enemy is the weapon a generation of American submariners carried into the Pacific. For the first half of the war, U.S. fleet torpedoes were defective, and the War Service knew it. The older Mark 14 steam torpedo and its newer electric cousin, the Mark 18, carried design flaws that were nothing the Imperial Japanese fleet had to live with. The Mark 14's depth exploder, the contact mechanism that should have set the warhead's running depth to strike hull plating, was miscalibrated from the start of the war, and it sent most warheads gliding 12 feet or more below the keel of their targets. The warheads passed under. The targets sailed on. The crews counted it as a miss. The Mark 14's exploder mechanism was also prone to premature detonation at the end of a run. The Mark 18, the electric variant, was supposed to be cleaner, no steam exhaust trail, no wake to be seen from a bridge, but it carried its own demons. The Mark 18 had a habit of broaching out of the water, of losing its depth discipline, and of swinging hard in a wide arc back toward the boat that had launched it. Across the early war patrols of 1942 and 1943, the dud and circular run rate on certain torpedo stocks climbed toward 50% of all fish launched. In some fleet units, it ran higher. Whole patrols came home, having registered more misses than hits. Some boats came back with a third of their torpedoes unspent, and their officers wondering whether they had anything left to fire. Every American submariner who put to sea with those fish understood that his weapon might not fire, might miss, might come home. The Bureau of Ordnance, BUORD, the Navy's Weapons Bureau in Washington, D.C., insisted the problem lay with the crews. Skippers who reported duds into the radio were quietly marked as unreliable in some squadrons. BUORD refused to admit the weapon was wrong. The Bureau's position, formally, was that the torpedoes were fine. But crews sailed anyway. They sailed because the war demanded it, and because instruments will not debate doctrine. By the autumn of 1944, most of the Mark 14 bugs had been corrected, and the fix had reached fleet units. The electric Mark 18 was supposed to be the next answer. The depth issues had been engineered out on paper. New directional gear was meant to prevent the broad arc circle run. The full audit on the improved rail had not yet been completed. Tang sailed with the new Mark 18. The new Mark 18 is the fish we are about to watch turn back at her. The man under command. Then there was O'Kane. He had learned his trade as executive officer under Lieutenant Commander Thomas Mick Morton aboard USS Wahoo in the boat's second and third war patrols. Wahoo was an aggressive boat. Morton took her in close, fired from short range, and used the night surface technique to press attacks against Japanese convoys in the Solomon Islands and the Marshall Islands. Morton did not come home from the boat's third patrol. He was lost with most of the crew. O'Kane watched Morton's schoolhouse-breaking methods for 2 patrols. Morton pressed through the escort ring, surfaced at night under the convoy, closed to short range, and trusted the warship's own momentum to carry her into the wake of his fish. The doctrine was a free hand and a hard mark on the target's bow. O'Kane carried all of it forward. O'Kane survived that patrol. He carried the lessons back to Pearl Harbor, where he was given command of USS Tang on 15 October 1943 at the Mare Island Navy Yard in California, and where he began building his own boat in the image of Wahoo. By her first war patrol, beginning 22 January 1944, O'Kane's steady hand had shown what the boat could do. 16 hits on 24 torpedoes deployed. a 66% hit rate, against a weapon the fleet still did not entirely trust. In the patrol, he was credited with 5 Japanese ship sinkings. By her second patrol, the boat conducted no ship attacks, but rescued 22 downed aviators off Truk. By her third war patrol in June 1944, Tang was credited with 4 major Japanese vessel sinkings in a single day: Tamahoko Maru, Tainan Maru, Nasusan Maru, and Kenichi Maru. By her fourth patrol that summer, she had come home from the Honshu coast and added 2 large Japanese transports to her scoreboard, including the 8,135-ton Tsukushi Maru, sunk in August 1944. Her third patrol alone had added 39,160 tons to the American tonnage scoreboard. Within the Pacific Submarine Force, the numbers were starting to come in. The boat was running ahead of the rest of the fleet. The skipper's name was rising with his boat. He was tracking toward a place at the top of the Pacific underwater scoreboard. He did not yet know the 24th Torpedo had already chosen a different heading. But skill cannot rewrite physics. By October 1944, Tang's worst enemy was not the destroyer overhead, nor the wild Pacific night. It was the warhead resting patiently in the after torpedo room, waiting on its own private instructions. The textbook shot. O'Kane had built a doctrine nearly as dangerous as the weapon. A down-the-throat shot, fired across the bow of a target, into the path of a ship that had just turned toward the submarine, was a Wahoo signature, born from Morton's aggressive night surface contact. The geometry is short. The enemy is moving. The enemy turns to bring guns to bear on the boat that is attacking. The boat fires across the bow. The shots lead the ship's own motion, and the percentage of a hit rises steeply because the target's own momentum becomes part of the aiming. The technique requires staying outside the target's turn circle long enough to read the bow, hearing the bridge's orders to the helm, judging range, and firing one spread pattern across a closing arc. The older American doctrine from 1940, fire from outside, fire from depth, fire at angles, produced misses. The new doctrine required the boat to come up to periscope depth, traverse to the bow's track, and fire inside the target's own lethal arc. Tang had made the doctrine her own. She had run down the throat shots against freighters, against patrol boats, against transports, and had collected hits where other boats often found duds. A 4-inch margin between hit and miss became, with the doctrine, a clean probability in the boat's favor. By the autumn of 1944, the technique was being copied at other commands. By the close of the war, it had become standard at the submarine school in New London. But doctrine cannot tame the exploder. The bullet the boat was firing was the same bullet the boat could not fully trust, and O'Kane, the man who had committed the doctrine to memory, was about to commit the boat to the worst part of the night. The night of 24 October 1944. So we go to sea. Tang cleared Pearl Harbor on her 5th war patrol in late September 1944. The boat had been overhauled at Pearl. New fish had been loaded. The crew had been refreshed. The skipper had been briefed on what lay ahead. The Leyte landings had just begun, and Japanese supply convoys were attempting to reinforce the Philippines from bases in China and Formosa. By the night of 24 October, Tang had made contact with a Leyte-bound convoy about 6 miles off Turnabout Island. 3 tankers, a transport, a freighter, numerous escorts, patrol boats, destroyers, and at least 1 converted gunboat. The night was clear. The moon was on the other side of the world. O'Kane chose the dark side of the formation and pressed in at periscope depth. Over hours, Tang fired a barrage and broke the target wide. Tankers on fire, tankers sinking. A transport, swinging to ram the submarine, collided with another tanker also trying to ram Tang. The collision tore into both vessels, lit the night with orange flame, and lit the deck of the submarine with a moving shadow. O'Kane read the geometry quickly and fired 4 fish into the largest surviving tanker and sent her down with the rest. With escorts closing from 3 bearings, he turned the boat toward the open ocean and ran. Smoke drifted across the night. The escort destroyers had come in close, and their depth charges had rolled the boat. But the firing had been one-sided. Tang had been on the giving end. The crew had worked through 5 separate attacks in a single night, and an officer on the conning tower had counted them aloud as each flash came at long distance. When Tang was about 6,000 yards from the convoy, another huge explosion occurred and sent a final enemy vessel below the waves. The boat had accounted for 5 ships in a single night, 22 of 24 torpedoes spent. The night was nearly done. But 2 torpedoes remained, and the wounded transport was still floating, lights visible to the south, dead in the water. O'Kane maneuvered Tang into a perfect night surface setup, close range, low silhouette, the moon on the other side of the world. He came up to periscope depth, took the bridge, and readied the last 2 tubes. 2 running shots, time to clean up. 2 shots, the transport down, and head for home. Top off the fish count, and claim the work for the boat. History was about to record this very differently. Mid-roll CTA. Hit subscribe right now, because what happens next is the most important American submarine moment of the war, and the weapon that made Tang the top tonnage boat in the Pacific is going to do something no submarine skipper ever wants to think about. Do not go anywhere. The Last Fish, 0230, 25 October 1944. Then there was no time left in the night. 0230 local. The tubes were nearly empty. The watch was nearly over. The boat was running low on time before the moon came up, and the night ended the surface attack. Commander O'Kane surfaced the boat and took the bridge for the last shot of the night. The 2 torpedoes, the last fish the boat would carry on this patrol, sat waiting in their tubes, 450 pounds of explosive apiece, electric motors spinning up slow, gyros aligned. The wounded transport lay ahead, her lights visible to the south. The calm was over the boat, and there was no moon above the sea. 2 spread shots. Spread, meaning 2 torpedoes fired on slightly different angles to increase the chance of a hit. Both tubes fired. Both fish began their run. One hit the transport. The boom of the warhead rolled across the water. The transport began to settle by the stern, lighting up the convoy's port wing. The other one didn't. The luminous wake did not point at the transport. The Mark 18 broached, pierced the surface, an unintended behavior of an electric torpedo that had lost its depth discipline, and then swung hard to the left, then steadied, then curved in a wide arc. The arc went back. The arc went at the boat. The fish was running on the surface. Tang's bridge watch saw the wake closing. Fish number 24 was not running underwater. Fish number 24 was running on top of the sea at 28 knots, a thin, bright line, getting closer. They had maybe 10 seconds. O'Kane ordered full right rudder. He ordered emergency dive. He ordered anything. The boat's momentum carried 240 tons of steel through oil-black water, but the fish was already inside the boat's turning circle. The Mark 18 struck Tang's after torpedo room, the compartment where the director controls and the last spare warheads lived, and detonated. The stern dropped. The bow came up. The hull cracked at frame 102. The aft compartments flooded almost immediately. The boat's keel broke. The boat sank by the stern, then by the whole boat. Within 30 seconds, USS Tang was gone from the surface, and the boat that had set the Pacific submarine record was down. O'Kane was on the bridge when it happened. The bow flipped upward as the stern went under, throwing O'Kane and the rest of the bridge watch into the black water of the Formosa Strait. They hovered in the dark. They heard nothing from the boat. The water was cold. The boat that sank more enemy tonnage than any other U.S. submarine in the war had just been killed by her own last fish. The survivors? 9. That is how many of USS Tang's 87 men survived the sinking. The night was cold. The boat went down in less than a minute. The aft compartments flooded. The pressure hull broke. The watch below the bridge went down with the boat. The fish had hit where the men were. At dawn on 25 October 1944, the Japanese patrol boat P-34, itself out hunting for survivors of the very ships Tang had sunk in the night, found 6 of the 9 survivors clinging to a piece of wreckage in the cold water. A whaleboat was lowered from the patrol boat's davits. O'Kane and his men went aboard as prisoners of war. The remaining 3 Tang survivors died of wounds, exposure, or the sea before rescue. Of 87 crew, only 9 came through the night. O'Kane did not command another submarine during the war. He did not see his wife and child again until Japan's surrender in August 1945. He was a prisoner of the Imperial Japanese Navy through the rest of the Pacific War. He had been the top tonnage ace of the American submarine service. The weapon had announced it for him. Board and the long silence. Tang was not the first. 6 months earlier, on 26 March 1944, USS Tullabee had been sunk in the Palau Islands by a circling Mark 18 of her own. The skipper had seen the wake, same as O'Kane would later see his. 9 men survived. The Bureau of Ordnance had been told, in writing, multiple times. The Bureau had not moved. Tang would be the proof that finally closed the Bureau's silence. 6 months had passed since Tullabee's loss. The attack report had been sent. The Bureau had filed it. No fix had come. Bu Ord had been told 3 times. The 4th letter went down with them. The boat went down. The doctrine stayed. The Tang that came back. Tang would not return to a home port. Her hull lay on the bottom of the Formosa Strait when Japan's surrender ended the war in August 1945. Her bones would stay there. The boat that had pressed through 5 patrols in just over a year would not come home. The U.S. Navy credited her kills where they belonged. By official American account, Tang's score across her 5 patrols had been 24 ships and more than 100,000 tons of Japanese shipping sunk. That score placed her at the top of the U.S. submarine tonnage scoreboard. Some count climbed higher when shared sinkings were included. The boat's record stood for the war. O'Kane received the Medal of Honor for actions spanning 1943 and 1944. The presentation came after his release, following Japan's surrender. The recognition was so rare that it had been given to only a handful of submariners in the war. Behind the citation was the body of Tang's lost crew and the silence of the Bureau of Ordnance for 2 years before the night. Within the fleet, O'Kane's tactical legacy lived after him. The down-the-throat shot became a textbook technique at the submarine school in New London, Connecticut. The aggressive night approach he had built at Wahoo and Tang became a Pacific submarine service standard. The crew, scattered across other boats after their captivity, took the lessons into other commands. The next generation of fleet boats would carry the doctrine forward without carrying Tang's hull home. About that legacy, we come back. The doctrine survived the death of its teacher. The boat died. The lesson did not. Tang rode the war out as the deadliest American submarine command of the Pacific War, and her skipper became the top tonnage ace of the U.S. submarine service. The enemy was not a nation. The enemy was a beautifully complicated weapon whose hidden flaw could not be defeated by skill alone. The doctrine O'Kane built survived. The boat that carried the doctrine did not. Only because people like the Tang crew insisted on telling Washington what was wrong, with each tell, did anything change. The audit cost lives. The audit also bought the next generation's submarine safety. Tang paid for it in 90% of her crew, most of 87 men under the Formosa Strait, waiting for a moon that would not come for them. The Bureau of Ordnance had refused to acknowledge what their boats had been saying since 1942. The lesson is plain enough to write on a blackboard in steel. The weapon you trust, absolutely, is the one auditing your arithmetic. We tell these stories because the people who lived them are gone now, and the choices they made stay with us. If this hour meant something to you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week we tell you how America actually won its war. Like the video, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We'll see you in the next one.